Call the meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. All members are present. Approval of the agenda. Is there any changes, corrections, or anything to the agenda? Council? Do I have a motion to approve the agenda with as presented?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Shallon. Do I have a second? Second by Joe?
Yep.
Second by Joe. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Approval of the minutes of the February 17th, 2021 regular meeting. I'll receive them in your packet. Is there any changes, corrections, or clarification needed? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the February 17th meeting?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Diane, do I have a second? Second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. This now brings us to our public open forum. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the council? Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the council? Call a third time. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to the council? Our public open forum is now closed. We have no public hearings. This will bring us to our reports and presentations. 6A, Stearns County Prosecution Report. Janelle Kendall.
Good evening. Glad to see you again and glad to get out of the house. Court is by Zoom these days. All of our meetings are by Zoom, and what we're finding is that we're just fitting more meetings in a day because there's no transport time in the middle. So we are as busy as ever, and I'm glad to be able to come up and tell you about what we've done as your city attorney this year, as well as from a county-wide perspective where that fits in. So we'll start, as we always do, with the letter about diversion, about the first-time offenders that come through the office and who don't go to court. And we did have 6 adults that qualified as first offenders out of Sauk Center this year. We had 1 juvenile. And what happens with those folks is they make restitution, they do community service, which we've actually still found ways to do in this environment. We did have a significant change. We had 200 people on average as juveniles coming through for diversion. We only had 100 this last year. But we usually only have about 30 adults, and this year we had 50. Usually the adults will just pay their ticket rather than going through the extra work that they actually have to do to go through diversion. And we saw more adults who were probably at home and probably had more opportunity to do it actually choose to go through diversion this year. So the numbers did change a little bit, but just like I say, from one category to the other. And we did have some kids in your jurisdiction. So it's a little harder to send them out on community work projects right now, but we're finding things for them to do so that they can pay their debts and move on, and we did have a number of people do that this year. Then we go to the Sauk Center City Report, which is the one with the colors and the bars on the front. These are the things that we do under contract with you as your city attorney. And as you can see, your numbers went down a little bit. I can tell you that happened across the county. Literally every jurisdiction from the sheriff's office through St. Cloud, through Sauk Center, everyone dropped almost in half this year. There were some times when officers had a lot to deal with during 2020, and we saw citations generally go down. But these citations are only the ones that would have actually had a file created in my office. Everybody else just paid the ticket. So this doesn't reflect all the work that your police department does. It reflects the parts that my office actually sees. And as you can see, you still have a fair amount of DWIs. I wouldn't say that's higher or lower than it's been in the past, but that's always been something that your officers pay a lot of attention to. They do a nice job. Sergeant Jensen is kind of a little bit of a, like, sticks out as a star. In that way, he really, he does a nice job on getting involved. He does a nice job of following the rules, and he does a nice job of writing a report that he's following the rules. He does a very nice job of following the rules with that dog as well. There are a whole bunch of extra things that apply to our canine officers, and we have a lot more canines across the county than we used to have. Part of that, I think, in part because of the drug interdiction that they do, and then some of them also, if we're going to get into scuffles, if we're going to get into situations where somebody might get hurt, the ability to have that dog there, usually all they have to do is give what they call the canine command, that I have a dog here, they can hear it bark, and they cooperate. And nobody wants anybody to get hurt and to have to use those dogs. But for the most part, yours is doing a really nice job in drug interdiction. And again, following all the rules, because there are a lot of rules that you have to follow in those cases. So as we look at what you had on the second page, broken out into the serious felony cases, as well as the misdemeanors that we handle for your city, you'll see that green bar there, that's the felony offenses. That's where it's not a ticket or somebody going to jail. There's a potential of someone going to prison in those cases. And you can see that yours are right up there. Again, for a city of this size, that's not unusual at all. The only thing that we really saw go down in the last year were the misdemeanors and the citations that were written. Serious crimes are right at where they have been. In fact, I would say by the time we get the final year-end numbers, they're actually going to be up a little bit. So we see about 40 felonies out of Sauk Center a year, but we see between 11 and 1,200 across the county. So when you look at the size of your jurisdiction, the fact that you're kind of at a crossroads here, you've got 71 coming through, you've got a fair amount of these things starting on I-94. They're keeping a good eye on your community, and they're not afraid to get involved and see what's happening around them. And we can certainly see that in the cases that we deal with. Of those 40 felonies, I've got the list here. The chief knows who they are. But you had actually two of the more infamous stories on people fleeing from law enforcement started with Sergeant Jensen's stops out there on 94. I don't know if you heard the story about the one that involves the drone and the dog in the police department or the fire department digging the guy off the top of a building. We've had a lot more fleeing cases generally this year. I'm not sure what the attitude is out there that fleeing from the cops is somehow happening more often. Obviously, we all talk to each other and the radios work just fine and we know where they go. There is, as was followed in that case, some good strong policies in place that if it's gonna get dangerous, you call it off. And they did call that one off. And then they picked up where he was again as he's driving through the ditches and they can see the headlights bouncing. And that's where the dog helped to track to a shed, and he was up on the top of the shed, and the drone found him on top of the shed, and they had to send the fire department up there to get him. So it happens, but caught him. And most of the people that we see in those situations now are people that have done it before. These are not first-time offenders who got afraid and got spooked and made a bad choice. Unfortunately, for the most part, these are dangerous offenders, and the ones that Sergeant Jensen ran across there in the middle of the night, he handled the situation well. And so I just want you to know that your people are well-trained and they're following the rules. And we appreciate that as prosecutors because then we can follow the rules and put those cases into court. So when you look at the last page, which is overall in the county, with those charts and graphs, when you look at the upper left hand in the adult felonies, there's those 11, 1,200, you see that the number is down to 800. When the court system shut down for the first time, and then periodically on and off through the COVID time that we've had here so far, we held back files that were not going to move. So we have 489 more files that don't show up on this report because we haven't put them into court yet. The offenders that were harming persons, that were fleeing from cops, that were doing that kind of immediate public safety danger, those have gone through, those have continued to move, but some of the property and drug crimes literally would not get a court hearing. They would still be sitting in the system without a court hearing. So we very intentionally held those back, and as those persons either commit new crimes or come into custody, we deal with all their files at once. And we're actually reaching out to our neighboring counties, and as those persons come into, it looks like kind of an on-ramp to the interstate of the court system. As they come in with these files, we've also called around the state to find out what other files they have going on. Our record right now is 8 counties worth of files dealt with in one court hearing. We're gonna have to deal with this wave when it comes back, so let's have a plan, not a reaction. So we're literally dealing with those files in chunks as they come into the system. We have been doing jury trials. In fact, we've tried 2 homicides. We got a verdict on a second one today. We do have a courtroom that did not previously exist in the basement of the administration building, where you go into town, renew your tabs, where my office is. Downstairs, that's now a felony courtroom, because we didn't have a courtroom big enough to get a felony jury in there. So our building is actually under remodeling right now, and we took the opportunity that it was empty because people were not, either they were working out of office or they had already moved out to the service center, and we built a CARES Act felony courtroom downstairs. It's secure, it's big enough. We're having trials whenever the Supreme Court will let us have trials so that we can move that along. We've also had the good fortune that jurors came when we asked them to come. That didn't happen in every county. If people were afraid they weren't going to be safe when they got there, or what the rules were going to be, some counties actually experienced not being able to have a trial because the jury wouldn't come. Ours came. Ours came. We've had, I don't know, 15 trials, I think, in that time. So we can only do one at a time, where we used to do 3 to 5 at a time. We've only got one courtroom that's big enough. But that is ultimately the only power that we have as prosecutors, is tell the jury about it. And we are going to have some more trials coming up right ahead of us. We've got them lined up back to back to back. Because again, in knowing that we have this backlog, we need to have a plan for how we're going to handle that. So we are fortunate that the county board saw fit to build us that courtroom. We've asked them to please keep it, so that when we get back to full strength, it's yet one more place that we can keep secure. And obviously using a lot of technology. You can see what we have there. Our person crime numbers, looking at the bottom of the page, are right up there where they've always been, because the court system didn't ever even slow down for them. Our gun offenses are right up there, again, even on the high side, and as well as the felony traffic cases. And you had a couple felony DWIs here, again, that your officers were able to detect and deal with. And those fleeing cases, those are felonies. So you're seeing a high number there. But when you look at the property and drug offenses, that's where it appears that they dropped in half. Oh no, those are just waiting, so that when they come in, we can make sure that the time is dealt with effectively, and it just doesn't sit there for another year. So those cases are being dealt with very intentionally. On the child protection and juvenile numbers there toward the top right, you can see that those numbers are down. Candidly, I kind of doubt that juvenile crime dropped in half. The kids weren't in school. We didn't have mandated reporters. We didn't have kids getting into fights at school. We didn't have kids seeing each other at school. We didn't have school resource officers able to access those kids at school. So this will be interesting to see as kids are back. It would be awesome if juvenile crime had actually dropped in half, and that was actually true, that those things weren't happening. I'm a little skeptical of that, candidly, on a short turnaround, because you see the child protection numbers likewise when you don't have access to mandated reporters. But we did have certainly a number of those reports, and I can tell you there were some pretty serious ones that the chief got the Child Advocacy Center, CentraCare's Child Advocacy Center involved. Again, we can count on these guys to know what to do and how to handle it when those serious cases come in. So those are absolutely reflected countywide. So I have a bunch of information in front of me. This council usually has a question or two, and I'm happy to answer anything I can.
Council got any questions?
Good job.
Give them some time to look at the information a little bit here. And
No, that's fine.
You might outrun the police car, but you're never going to outrun the police radio.
That's just it. In the stop sticks, one of the cases that made it all the way into St. Cloud, the other kind of infamous one that makes it all the way into St. Cloud, they kind of lose him, but then he hit the stop sticks. So you can literally see the damage to the road from driving on his rims. And that's how they ultimately track him to where he is. And then again, the canines, pretty much most of the agencies have trackers now. So we'll find you. Might be not exactly then so that you don't kill somebody, but we'll find you.
is the jail up to capacity, or are they still under restrictions?
He's still under restrictions, but he's opening up pretty steadily. There for a while, it was partly jail staff getting infected, because when he would lose one person, he'd lose an entire shift. So it was actually a number of days out that it had to be planned, even who was going to come to work. It's primarily, though, the person crime offenders. Like I say, there's murderers in there, there's sexual assaults, it's domestics, it's really nasty people. But other people who have had warrants out for them for some time, he's inching up there. He's inching up there. It's been a matter of making sure we've got enough staff to handle it at all times in case you lose a whole shift because somebody gets exposed. But they've done a really nice job. And again, it's all been part of a group. The sheriff is very much, he's actually, at those chiefs of police meetings, he's actually out involved with all the agencies. And we've really, I think it's safe to say, we've seen a different approach with this group, and it's been a good thing. So as those things happen with the jail, obviously these guys want to be able to take people to jail. When they catch people, they want to be able to deal with that. But everybody's been in the loop on the communication on what can be done and what can't and why. So I think that's partly where the cooperation has been, because he's actually out there. He is a chief deputy, he used to be a cop in this county, and that helps. So they know each other, and there's a good shared information, which then can build trust.
Okay. Anybody else in the council got any questions? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for having us. We appreciate doing your work, and we like working with your chief. Congratulations on hanging on to these officers as they come in. Some of the cities don't have as good an experience in the long run hanging on to some of those officers that you get trained up. I've had the same issue in my office where you get the young ones trained up and then they go to the metro. Well, good for us, they're not. I'm actually hiring from the metro now. So
Good.
this is good.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, Park Board report. The Park Board met on Tuesday, March 2nd, which was yesterday. We welcomed in new members Brian Zolman and Ashley Brueggemann. Chairman, myself, was elected as chairman. Barry Johnson was elected as vice chair. We first reviewed and approved the layout of the campground bathroom/safe room. We recommended the purchase of the day use dock. We recommended the summer seasonal employment and reviewed the various outstanding projects, including camper cabins, the Challenge Park, Master Park Plan, Tower View Baseball Field improvements, and the arena mural. So is there any questions or concerns about what the Park Board reviewed last night? Okay, then we will move on to the EDA report. And the EDA met today, March 3rd. They received an update from the Chamber on Sinclair Lewis Day's plans. They recommended the BDPI grant approval, which is on the agenda for tonight, and recommended the SCDP loan grant for March 17th meeting for the downtown businesses. So is there any questions or comments about that? Okay, and then we will move on to action items. Approve amendments to the special assessment policy. I think Keith is taking care of this one.
I am. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have before you the amendments to special assessment policy. The Finance Committee met with myself and city staff about a month ago or so now. At that meeting, we came with a draft of changes that we recommended at the staff level, talked about those with the Finance Committee, and ultimately agreed upon what should be in what is before you now for your consideration and approval tonight. Those really are identified as these, there's 7 bullet items through here. The first 5 really are clarification items, just to help clarify some of the issues that we found just in text kind of things within the amendments. And the last 2 are more of the meat, where it's really financial changes, if you will, to the assessment policy. The first one is the service life, where we just define some of the service life of the surface improvements and subsurface improvements, meaning streets and things on the surface, as well as the utilities, the sewer and water, the storm sewer below there. So that was just, you'll find that in section 3A. And I won't go through the details. You can look at those, and if you have any questions, we'll have time for that in a second here. The next one is the amendments. It amends potential financing to include other surface improvements. So we once again, kind of clarified what we meant by surface improvements, so that's really what that is. So it's just a clarification in section 7D1. The next one differentiates between storm sewer and sanitary sewer in 7D2, so it just separates them to make sure that it's clear which one we're talking about in terms of sanitary sewer or storm sewer, so it really is just a clarification. The next one further explains how that front footage is adjusted for assessment on cul-de-sac lots, and actually it's more than just cul-de-sacs. It could be on a curve, especially on some of those tight curves. We ran into one on the last project on the north side there. So it just clarifies how we do the front footage on those kinds of lots. So it's just a clarification on that. The next one differentiates between overlay and rehabilitation. And this kind of leads into the next, which is financial. This defines between a mill and overlay type of projects where the rehabilitation is something that's a little more than that. So it's kind of in between a mill and overlay and like a full reconstruction. And the full depth reclamation, we've done a few of them here in the city, which is a little more onerous. It provides much more service life to the road before we get to a full reconstruction, and it's needed on some roads that are just too far for a mill and overlay, but not quite ready for a full reconstruct. So it's kind of something that's in between, okay? So it defines those. It separates between mill and overlay and full depth reclamation. The last two bullet items are really the financial changes. This is where it impacts the city and the residents or parcel owners, what they ultimately have to pay. The first one amends the percentage for that street reconstruction. We've been doing 50-50 at this point in time, and we're recommending that change to the resident or the property owner to a 35%. So a 15% reduction on the assessed side, which means that 50% then comes to the city side. So that has to be dealt with as it relates to the general fund and those kinds of things. So that is very much in line with where other communities are size, some smaller, some larger even. That's pretty much where most are at these days, is about that 35%. 25% is kind of that minimum threshold for assessments. And just because of costs of keep going up every year, about 2.5%, you just kind of need to start ratcheting it down because it's very difficult to prove benefits when they're too high, when the percentage is too high. The last one really then is the adds for that rehabilitation we talked about just earlier. It adds that as portion of an assessed amount where it could be not 0%, so it could be a 35% assessed amount for that rehabilitation item to the adjacent landowners. So those are really the two main things that sort of impact, if you will, the pocketbook of both the city and the adjacent property owners. So I think I'll stop there, and this is what the Finance Committee is, I believe, recommending move forward with. But I'll answer any questions that you may have. If you want to get into any detail of any items, I'd be certainly happy to do that.
Questions? Concerns? Self-explanatory. Basically, if you have one of the items is if you, normally if they did a mill and overlay or full reclamation of the road in front of you, you didn't pay anything. Now it's going to be an assessment up to at 35%. That's one of the major things now, so.
And the full reconstruction down to a 35%.
And full reconstruction, right.
Typically, kind of on average, we're normally in about that $10,000 range. I'll just round to make that simple math. So you can imagine 15% of that is, about $1,500, obviously, which would be a reduction on the landowner's side on that kind of average residential type size lot.
Right.
So how does a full depth reclamation differ from the full reconstruction of the street?
Full reconstruction would include all of the curb and gutter. The rehabilitation does not. Usually that's just spot repairs kinds of things. It doesn't also go all the way down to the subgrade. It's just dealing with the gravel essentially and the bituminous on the top. So it's just grinding that up is what a full depth reclamation is. It provides that stability, and then we have a new surface that's put on top of that. Reconstruct removes everything, starts all over again, essentially from scratch, and builds it back up again.
So the reconstruction, obviously, if you wouldn't have the subsurface utilities and all those things that are being done, would a full depth rehabilitation be essentially the reconstruction of the road surface only?
The road surface only, that's correct.
Okay.
With minor, there'd be repairs on, like I said, the curb and gutter and some things. There'd be spot repairs, but not wholesale replacement.
Okay. And then if the road, we got the useful life of 40 years, note here, so if the road needs to be redone for a full depth reclamation before the 40-year useful life, is that considered maintenance and not prorated, or is it prorated if you haven't gotten to the 40 years?
When we do assessment, it falls into that service life and that proration.
So it would be
that we have
prorated
in
yet
there.
if it's less than 40 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes that happens, it depends, how roads have been constructed in the past, and sometimes they don't last as long as they were intended to last. If the maintenance hasn't been done regularly as it needs to, that will make them deteriorate quicker, which is really a good reason to keep up on your scheduled maintenance. Ben is doing an awesome job in trying to keep up and identifying things to do, but that's really critical for your overall street programs to keep up with those things.
Main thing is, like a total reconstruct that's only gonna get done if the water and sewer underneath, if the PUC says, hey, we need to do something, and then we look at the life of the road.
Yeah.
This here is basically just trying to keep us from having to do a total reconstruct. If everything underneath is fine, just take it off, reconstruct, put a decent base down, and put tar back on top of it, is basically what your full depth reclamation is.
And that's absolutely true 98+% of the time. There are maybe odd things that could occur now and then, but almost all the time it's for that reason.
And one of the things that, we've looked at is, we've got the maps that tell you how many years old the sewer lines are, the water lines are, and when the road was built in and put in place as tar, and how many years has gone by. So when you look at all of that, it all comes together and tells you, okay, this thing's starting to fall apart, but it's not, everything underneath it is fine, so let's do this and get it some more life until a reconstruct does show up, so.
I'm glad you brought that up, actually, Mayor. That's a great point. There's a couple of you might are new and might not be aware that we have done an overall assessment of the utilities and the streets and the whole city, and looked at it as a composite, because we have things that we can't see underneath the ground, essentially, then how old they are, how old the street is on top of it, what conditions those are, and that helps us determine where the reconstructs are needed. In fact, one of those will be coming up tonight that we'll be talking about in a little bit here. And that's how we've identified those areas that need to be looked at, is a combination, because sometimes you can have a street that's a little better shape, if you will, on the top, because maybe it's had some maintenance somewhat recently, but everything down below is in really tough shape, very, very old. Hopefully we don't get to the point where it's the opposite way, where we have brand new stuff, that's not good. So we try to make sure that we are looking at it as an aggregate, as a holistic approach to what's underground and what's on top to get our best bang for our dollars.
Right. Is there any other questions, concerns? We have a motion to approve the amended special assessment policy.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Diane. Do I have a second?
A second.
Second by Heidi. Any other discussion or questions? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. 7B, approve resolution 2021-11, accepting bid for fire tanker. Ben?
Good evening, everyone. On January 21st, 2021, the City Council authorized the solicitation of bids for the purchase of a new fire tanker to replace the city's 1996 tanker. Bids were advertised and complimentary requests to bid were sent to companies known to build these trucks. Bids were publicly opened on February 25th, 2021 at 11 a.m. with the following bids presented. Midwest Fire for $204,750.00. Hyman Fire for $218,969.00. Both companies utilized the same chassis and added a tanker apparatus to it. The truck committee at the fire department reviewed the bids yesterday, actually, and they complied with the specifications, and their recommendation was to award the bid to Midwest Fire.
Okay. Questions? Comments? Do I have a motion to approve Resolution 2021-11 awarding the bid to Midwest Fire for $204,750?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Heidi. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Is that Shannon? Okay. Any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Aye.
Motion carries 4 in favor, none against, 1 abstention. 7C, approve resolution 2021-12 accepting bid for airfield maintenance.
The City Council, upon recommendation of the Airport Board, opted to proceed with an airfield maintenance project at the airport. This project would be funded in conjunction with the FAA, MnDOT Aeronautics, and the city, and includes seal coating the runway, turnarounds, aprons, taxiways, and the entrance road, and also includes rehabilitation of the area around the 2000 T hangar. The project was bid and bids were publicly opened on February 24th, 2021. The following submitted bids. Do I need to read all these?
Just read the lowest one.
Lowest bid was Central Specialties Incorporated at $204,946.08. The total project cost estimate for the project is $300,928.08, which includes the construction bid above along with the engineering and grant administration. The city's share of the project is $40,198.82. State share is $50,530.08, and the federal is $210,199.18. It is recommended that the city enter into an agreement with Central Specialties for the project. This award would be contingent upon final execution of FAA and MnDOT grant funding documents. Action requested is to approve the resolution 2021-12, awarding the bid to Central Specialties contingent upon execution of final grant funding documents.
Questions, comments? For the public, we did receive 9 bids for this project. But Central Specialties came in low at 204,946.08. Just if anyone in the public has any questions on that, there are 9 of them. Do I have a motion to approve resolution 2021-12, awarding the bid to Central Specialties contingent upon execution of final grant funding documents?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Diane. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Joe. Any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Approve resolution 2021-13 accepting quote for day use dock.
The Park Board has recommended that the city proceed with the installation of a day-use dock to be located in Sinclair Lewis Park. Donations were sought for the project, and currently $11,250 has been received, $10,000 from the Conservation Club, and $1,250 from the Big Sauk Lake Association. Specs were created and quotes were sought for the purchase. The dock is to be 6 feet wide and 60 feet long, shore end ramp 6 feet wide, 8 feet long, aluminum frame and decking. This included 10 bumpers and 10 cleats, and wheels on each section of the dock, along with easy adjustability. The following submitted quotes for the purchase. We received 6 quotes. The lowest bid was Boomerang Marine and Sports in Melrose for a flow dock of $11,979.35. Staff recommends the flow dock from Boomerang Sports. This dock is 6 feet wide to more easily accommodate accessibility. The frame is tube aluminum versus angle or rod, welded aluminum decking versus cedar or plastic, and the sections are easily disconnected from each other for ease of installation and removal from the lake, which can be done by 2 people. Requested action is to approve Resolution 2021-13, approving purchase of flow dock from Boomerang Sports. The park board also acted on this last night and approved purchasing it from Boomerang Sports as well.
Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns? Do I have a motion to approve the resolution 2021-13 approving the purchase of the flow dock from Boomerang Sports?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Shallon, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7E, approve resolution 2021-14 accepting quote for mini excavator.
The council previously recommended that the city proceed with obtaining quotes for the purchase of mini excavator in conjunction with the Sauk Center Public Utilities Commission. Public Works Supervisor Ben Klink and Electric Supervisor Shannon Ellering drafted specifications and quotes were sought for the purchase. The following submitted quotes for the purchase. We did receive 5 different quotes. The low bid was for a John Deere 30G, $40,921. However, this did not meet the specification. The recommendation would be for the Bobcat E35 from Farm Right Equipment for $41,413. That was the properly sized machine with the proper equipment that we requested. The 3 bids from RDO also were for demo units that had varying hours on the machines. The John Deere, let's see, we covered all that. So the above cost is to be split between the 2 organizations at $20,460.50 each. Action requested is to approve resolution 2021-14, approving purchase of the Bobcat E35 from Farm Right Equipment.
Questions, comments? One thing from when I did some research on too with the Bobcat is they've got various attachments that in case we need them, we can actually go there and rent them, and it'll fit onto this unit where some of the other equipment isn't easily attainable. So this is actually going to be better for the 2 organizations, the city and PUC. So is there any other questions, concerns? Otherwise, do I have a motion to approve resolution 2021-14 approving the purchase of the Bobcat E35 from Farm Right Equipment?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Diane, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7F, approve submittal of declaration waiver request BDPI grant. Okay, a part of the BDPI grant agreement for the development of the younger ag land into an industrial park, the city is required to file a declaration on the affected property. This real property declaration is part of a Minnesota management and budgets rules stating that property using funds from this grant cannot be sold until 125% of the useful life has been exhausted unless approved by the commissioner. In the case of Sauk Center's grant, the proposal will pay for infrastructure lying under or upon city-owned right-of-ways. As such, the property is not subject to sale, which leads to the city requesting a waiver of the declaration. A waiver request has been drafted and is attached. If approved, the city will not have to file the declaration. If denied, the city will have to file a declaration and will have to develop a separate legal description for the roadways on which to record the declaration. Is there any questions or concerns? I know the EDA approved passing that today. So I'm just, any questions or does anyone need any clarification on this? Otherwise, I will be looking for a motion to approve the filing request for real property declaration waiver for the BDPI grant.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Joe, do I have a second?
Shallon.
Second by Shallon. Any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7G, approve the BDPI grant agreement from Deed. Get on the right page. As announced at the last city council meeting, the city was selected to receive a grant in the amount of $1.3 million toward the cost of developing the 59-acre Unger Ag land into an industrial park. The grant agreement has several items to be addressed. The declaration waiver, which we just did, a commit to completion date of December 31st, 2023 for final compliance, commit to owning the infrastructure, commit to paying prevailing wages for the project, commit to funding the balance of the project. Eligible businesses must be manufacturing, technology, warehousing and distribution, research and development, or agricultural processing. If the council is comfortable with these conditions and wishes to move forward, it should authorize execution of the agreement. Do we have any questions or concerns over the agreement? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion that authorize execution of the grant agreement for a construction grant for the Sauk Center Industrial Park South BDPI project.
Motion
Go ahead, Dan.
Motion by Heidi,
to,
Okay.
I'll second.
second by Diane. Any other last discussion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7H, approve resolution 2021-15 establishing procedures for IRS bond regulations. The city has the potential improvement project for the Unger Ag that may require the issuance of bonds if the city so determines. This project has incurred expenses to date. If the city decides to issue debt for payment of the cost for the projects, it is expected that the city would want to reimburse itself for costs incurred to date with bond proceeds. In order to do that and comply with IRS regulations, the city must declare its intent to do so. The attached resolution sets forth the procedures relating to compliance with the IRS regulation. So basically, it's up to the council to, if we want, approve resolution 2021-15 establishing procedures relating to compliance with reimbursement bond regulations under the Internal Revenue Code. Is there any questions or concerns? Okay, do I have a motion to approve resolution 2021-15?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Joe. Second by Diane. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7I, approve resolution 2021-16 ordering feasibility report 2022 CIP project.
Okay, this item, the city's been working on developing the scope of this project for the planned, or the draft plan 2022 street reconstruction project. There are a couple of graphics that are included with this. It includes the reconstruction of 2nd Street South, Maple, Walnut, Willow, Cedar, with all full reconstruction, sanitary sewer, water, storm, curb and gutter, sidewalk, and the streets, along with street rehabilitation, which we're looking at probably a full depth reclamation or a technique that's very similar to that, but likely rehabilitation or the full depth rehabilitation for Park Road, Park Lane, Parkview Drive, Hickman, Lakeview, basically everything that's shown on there. On the graphics, you'll see that those are identified. The reconstruct is the kind of the pinkish, light reddish colors, and the rehabilitation is the light bluish color in there. One change that we recommend for what we have is from the operations committee was that Birch Street, which is that far easterly north-south, they just did a full reconstruct. the rehabilitation on that a couple of years ago. Ben and I got mixed up on some communication on that, so that one should not be on there. But one area that we thought we probably should include, which is actually Pacific, which is not included, at least that block between Cedar and Willow, and potentially all the way to the west as it kind of ends at the gravel road there, if you will. So it's easier, at this stage in terms of feasibility, thinking about it, to add, make sure your scope is large enough, because you don't necessarily have to do it all. We can cut things back at that time, but that would be where the items that we discussed moving forward with. There are a couple streets in the rehabilitation that are not at the at the 40-year portion. So there would be some proration as it relates to those. The streets are in bad shape, but they haven't met that service life threshold at this point in time. So there will, just to make sure that you're aware of that at this point in time. But that's what we're looking at for our reconstruct and our rehabilitation for the scope of work for 2022. We are asking for the action item to approve the resolution, which will actually order the feasibility report. And I think what I'll do is I'll stop, and if either council member Kelly or Wilbur wishes to add any comments from that meeting to the rest of the council.
Well, I know we need to do some borings and find out what's under that street and how bad it is. And I know 2nd Street South, that sewer's been in there since before 1937. I know that. It's in bad shape. It's crumbling.
It is very old. This is the next, really, the next area on our CIP that says this is where we should be going for the reconstruct portion. 2nd Street, we've talked on and off over the last couple of years. That is a wider street. We don't have to decide this tonight, but we'll have a discussion, I think, in the near future about some of the details we might want to add. Sidewalks, an example. 2nd Street, I believe, is a 40-foot roadway. We might want to consider going to that 36-foot, which is a more typical standard roadway. So I'll come back to you with some kind of a discussion topic on it, probably maybe at the next council meeting or the one after at the latest, I would say. So we don't have to get into those details tonight, but because perhaps the administrator might want to weigh in on that, and she has a tough time communicating tonight. So it might be nice to wait till she can be a little more part of that discussion. But
So which road did you mention, boring?
Just on the rehabilitation portions, right? That was supposed to be it.
And that we'll actually probably do borings on through all. So it's a good point. Yeah. We would be doing borings through here to make sure we see what's underneath the roadways on the reconstruct portions and some on the rehabilitation. We'll make sure that we do the right techniques. So just to make sure there's not something down below in the subgrade that's going to cause issues with what we want to do. So that would be part of the analysis that would be completed.
So basically, like on Hickman Drive, by boring, we'll find out if we got any gravel base or if it's just muck that it's sitting on.
Yeah, right. We'd probably go down in those areas like 4 feet typically. So we're just looking for that top layer of what kind of soil is below the gravel. If there's good stability in it, if there's not, how much gravel is there, how much pavement is there, it'll all tell us all those things.
Okay. And one thing once we get that information, we'll decide whether or not we can go farther or our feasibility on it as far as budget goes.
Yeah.
So, and that was one of the questions I had asked, was just about the road, and it wasn't quite at its life expectancy yet.
Right.
Right. And that would all be looked at. So the new assessment policies that you just approved, this would be subject to that. So it'll all be done in accordance with those new assessment policies. And once again, it's a feasibility study, which means ultimately you decide you could cut back on things. You're not locked into anything at this point. You're just looking at the feasibility of doing this scope of work.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
And Keith, did I hear you right that you're removing from the reconstruct project the portion of Birch Street that runs along north and south between the church and Holy Family School?
Correct.
But then are you rehabbing or adding into the reconstruct the part of Pacific between Cedar and
Pacific,
Willow?
we'll have to look at that. It's kind of on the cusp. I think that might be a rehabilitation, not a reconstruct. So I'll look at that. If you give me some latitude on those in terms of your approvals tonight, but I can't say for sure whether that's going to be a reconstruct or a rehabilitate.
You can give us numbers both ways.
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll look at it both ways, so you can have all that, so.
Okay.
We'll be, a little ways off before we get to that point, so it'll take a little while to get there, especially, hopefully it won't snow anymore, so we can, we'll have to go out there and get some surveying done and those kinds of things, and it's starting to melt nicely now, so it'd be nice if it stays that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, do I have a motion to approve Resolution 2021-16, ordering feasibility report for 2022 street reconstruction projects?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Diane,
I'll second.
second by Shallon. Call the question. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against.
If I may add one thing I should have said earlier, is this was consulted with the PUC in terms of the scope for that, so, and they were in agreements with what you looked at tonight.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
7J, approve resolution 2021-17, calling hearing for 2021 capital improvement project.
Staff has identified various projects to be accomplished in 2021 with the street department funding allocation for street maintenance to include seal coating, crack filling, and overlays. The 2021 budget is $150,000. The operations committee will have a recommendation on which streets to perform maintenance on, which may include a full-depth reclamation project. Preliminary estimates based upon an inflation of 12% over 2019 bids for the potential projects include the Morningview area street seal coating, Lakeshore, Lake Ridge area seal coating. Those would be the 2 seal coating projects potentially for this year, and the rest of these would be full depth reclamation projects potentially. East Street, Eastview Drive, Anjo Drive, 10th Street from Main to Ash, and 8th Street South from Grove Lake to Pleasant Street. Full depth reclamation is subject to a special assessment for 35%, half to each side of the roadway. Prior to filing a special assessment on a parcel, a public hearing must be conducted. The attached resolution calls for a public hearing on the 2021 project to be held on April 21st, 2021. If the identified project will be for seal coating or crack filling, a public hearing would not be required and a resolution authorizing solicitation of quotes could be approved.
Questions, comments? Do I have a motion to approve resolution 2021-17, calling for the public hearing on improvements?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Diane, do I have a second?
Mayor,
Yes.
we should pick which streets we're gonna address with that. We identified that Anjo and East Street would potentially be 2 good picks.
Okay,
The other 3 could move down the list on the full depth reclamation. And then potentially with doing one of those 2, we could do some seal coating as well. And that's what the operations committee met about tonight. So we would need to decide whether we want to do Anjo Drive or East Street for our full depth reclamation to order that public hearing.
okay. So what discussions did operations,
We picked Anjo Drive and East Street.
those 2? And then the
Yes.
other 3, you're not doing anything with them? Okay,
We've only got 150,000 budget, so we're
okay,
just trying to stick with those 2 and see how it goes.
okay. So everybody understands, we're dropping Eastview Drive, 10th Street from Main to Ash, and 8th Street from Grove Lake to Pleasant. Those 3 are not on the table. Okay,
So I'm just trying to figure out the math here with the budget of 150, including both Morningview and Lakeshore with a seal coating, which is not accessible, correct?
Correct.
So then the full depth reconstruct would leave us with approximately $130,000 after we consider a 35% assessment to work with of our budget. Am I doing my math correctly?
Well, we'd have 150,000 to work with in the budget total.
Well, I'm just
And then-
thinking if we chose, I'm minusing the Morningview Lakeshore to our total. I didn't do my math correct.
Those seal coatings, they don't have to be done this year. It would be good to get them done if possible, but we have to work within the budget. I would recommend that we choose one street to do a full depth reclamation on, and then the remainder of the budget that's left over to seal coat whatever we can with that.
Okay,
So we're gonna
remaining
focus
money.
on full depth first?
Yep.
Okay.
okay. And then once we take the 35% off, then that brings us more into budget,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
Okay. Does everybody understand what we have a motion on the table. You still go, okay, so you're basically East Street and Anjo Drive.
Right.
And the 2 for seal coating. Okay? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Heidi. Any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Can I get a point of clarification?
Yes,
here?
go ahead.
So we're proposing East and Anjo for the full depth reclamation and doing both seal coating projects?
We're not,
That's not what being, so the hearings, just we're gonna have the hearings on those two.
the hearing will
full
be
depth-
on those two east and
FDR ones,
Anjo.
okay.
And then depending on how bids come back, let's say we just do one of those streets, we
Okay.
could take the remaining money and do seal coating.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7K, approve appointments of summer seasonal employment.
Public Works Supervisor Ben Klink has submitted the following requests for appointments for summer seasonal in the Public Works Department. Dennis Christensen, Park Street Maintenance is returning. Jake Fredericks, Park Streets Maintenance returning. Dwayne Woletzko, Park Streets Maintenance, currently working in the arena for winter seasonal. He would be coming in on his summer help. John S. Willer, Campground Manager returning. Doug and Cindy Ranglinger, Campground Manager backup returning. Because 2 of the Park Streets Maintenance will be working part-time intermittent, Klink is requesting to advertise for 1 additional part-time employee. Action requested approve seasonal public works personnel appointments and authorize advertisement for 1 part-time seasonal employee.
Questions? Concerns? Do I have a motion to approve the seasonal public works personnel appointments and authorize the advertisement for 1 part-time seasonal employee?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Motion by Shallen,
I'll second.
second by Diane. Any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. We have no unfinished business. We have no new business. That brings us our consent agenda. We have a schedule of claims, unpaid claims of $61,768.49 for a total of the same amount. We have resolution number 2021-18, resolution accepting contributions, $127.95 from the men's card playing group to be allocated to the senior center, $200 from Mary Jo Peterson to be allocated to the ambulance department, $1,250 from Big Sauk Lake Association to be allocated to the park department for the dock, $1,618.57 from Gerke Farms water fountain and bottle filler to be allocated to the arena, $100 from Harbor Freight to be allocated to the police department, and $20 from Jerome and Janice Rapp to be allocated to the senior center. And on behalf of the city and this council, I want to thank those groups and people for those contributions. Is there any questions about the consent calendar? Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Diane, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. We have no informational items, but we will be going into a closed session for personnel reasons, so we will adjourn this, or recess this meeting until we clear the council chambers. Okay, our closed session is done. We are now reconvening the council's meeting. The council met in closed session to discuss a personnel issue. We've directed staff in which direction we want to have this situation handled. That's so the public knows what we were meeting in. That also brings us to the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Motion by Shanlon, seconded by Diane. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, not against. Meeting adjourned.